supplies of food or water must have been very wearing on the German troops. The initial British smoke screen, fired by trench mortars and shells, was too good. In fact, it was that thick that the men going over the top in the first wave could not see their officers and their NCOs who were supposed to be guiding them across no man's land. They got completely lost. Many wandered off course straight into the teeth of the fire of the Z and little Z machine guns, which, along with the machine guns from the trenches straight ahead of them, was forming a deadly crossfire, wiping out whole platoons. Tragically, the smoke screen for the third and fourth waves had drifted away by this time, and when they followed their comrades out into no man's land, they were sitting ducks. Here we can see that the 7th Sherwood Foresters, the Robin Hoods from Nottingham, these are the guys here on the left-hand side of the British attack. On the left of the attack with the 5th Sherwood Foresters from Derby, they're here, from Derby, Belper and Ilkeston on their right. Next came up the North Staffordshires, with the South Staffordshires on the right of the Sherwood Foresters. This gives you some idea of what it was like when they were going over the top. Even though the shelling and the enfilading machine gun fire had caused havoc, a small number of men from the first wave actually made it to the German front and second line trenches that were mostly deserted by then, so that the Germans could shell the area themselves before counter-attacking these pitifully small groups of Tommies. Those that did get across were amazed what good condition the German trenches were in, and the fantastic view that they afforded of the British lines. The enemy had seen everything they had done in preparation for the attack. Just to show you here, there's the little Z, there's the Z. This is where we were attacking. Look how the machine gun could fire straight down no man's land, as well as the German machine guns firing into the British lines. We had no chance. This is a picture taken today, again robbed by one of the contributors. It shows you a modern picture. There's where the British front line was. The photograph is taken from, it's actually quite a steep hill. It doesn't look it in the photograph. But when I walked it up a muddy, sticky field 3 weeks ago, I wasn't carrying anything, and I was out of puff by the time I got to the top. So you can imagine carrying 100 pounds of kit under fire, trying to get to that top was quite a feat. Okay. Now then, this is a close-up map again of the British frontline trenches. Charlie's 8 Company, now around 07:45 to 8:45 in the morning, are trying to make their way up these trenches you can see here. These ones that are perpendicular to the front, these are the communications trenches. The communications trenches were now being heavily bombarded. Men were being killed left and right, and the wounded men from the first few waves were flooding back into the narrow trenches, trying to get back to the rear to the medical aid stations, and there was complete gridlock. Again, this is an aerial photograph taken today. There's the German front lines, and this is round about where Charlie and the boys were, trying to get across. A few minutes after the first waves had gone over the top, the German artillery opened up with everything they had on no man's land and the British front lines and the communication trenches. The Germans had zeroed their guns onto these areas with the aim of stopping any further waves of getting across no man's land, and it worked only too well. The situation is now deteriorating by the minute. The first wave is cut off in and around the German front line. The second wave, third waves have been cut to bits in no man's land, and the fourth wave is being machine gunned and shelled as they try to get up over the parapet of their own front line. No man's land is now littered with hundreds of dead and dying and wounded men who are trying to take what cover they can inside the shell holes of no man's land. A Royal Flying Corps spotter plane is sending back false reports of Tommies being seen in the Zs, so the British artillery don't shell these machine gun nests. Meanwhile, Brigade HQ is still thinking that the attack is going very well. The signallers who would be passing back situation reports from the first 5 waves as they go across are mostly dead. So the real situational mess is not being reported backwards to the officers in charge. It's now around 8:30 to 8:45. Lieutenant Wheatcroft, Charlie's platoon commander, makes a very fateful decision. As they're making no headway forward in the choked-up communications trench on the left-hand side of A Company, he will get his platoon forward with their essential supplies by getting up out of the trench and leading his men on the top of the parapet. The rest of A Company makes their way forward in a trench called number 3 Sap. Again, I'll paraphrase what it says here. I don't know if you can read that from where you are. Lieutenant Wheatcroft led the men towards the new British front line trenches along the parapet, over the top of the communication trenches. But after about 50 yards, he comes across a tangle of uncut British wire. It's blocking their path, so he stops and he tries to cut it. He was hit and collapsed onto the wire. Charlie, Charlie, seeing this, ran up 10 yards away from Lieutenant and also tried to cut through the wire. He was also hit by the shell cap of a German shrapnel shell in the abdomen and fell down near the Lieutenant. Sergeant Sharman was next, but he was hit in the back by a bullet and fell mortally wounded back down into the trench. Private Green also attempted to get through the wire, but he was also hit. Then Sergeant Dick Wagg came forward from his place at the rear of the platoon, stuck his head up over the parapet and assessed what was happening. He then climbed out of the trench and went and lifted Lieutenant Wheatcroft off the wire and brought him back to the trench. The blood-covered lieutenant was still conscious. He told Dick, "Fetch Shaw," which he did, and then he went out again a third time and collected Private Green. He then told the eyewitness, Private Bate, that this was the rummest corner he'd ever been in. Dick and Private Bates then got the wounded man back to the battalion aid station in Funky Villas. The morning attack had failed to reach the objective. Attempts were made by Brigade HQ to organise further attacks at around 12:30, but as there was insufficient smoke screen available, it was delayed and eventually cancelled completely in the late afternoon. Meanwhile, Charlie, Walter Green and Lieutenant Wheatcroft had been ferried back via the various aid boats and ambulances to the main dressing station 10 miles away at Wallingcourt Holt. Sadly, Lieutenant Wheatcroft died of his wounds.
His gravestone was the first one we came to in the cemetery where we visited on the 2nd of June this year. Sergeant Sidney Sharman's body was never recovered from the shattered CT. Charlie and Walter were put on a hospital train and departed Wallingcourt Holt at 01:30 hours on the 2nd of July and were both ferried to Le Treport, a Channel port on the coast. Walter was too poorly to go on further and died in hospital at Treport on the 5th of July. Charlie continued on home via a hospital ship to Southampton, and then by hospital train up to Hull Bank Auxiliary Military Hospital in Chester. The medical staff there did the best for him, but he died of a secondary hemorrhage on the 7th of July. He was laid to rest 4 days later with full military honours here at Christchurch. His parents managed to get here from Oldham, as did his younger brother Roland from training in France. The funeral was very well attended, including his beloved Mary and William Taylor and many other relatives and friends. The congregation from Marsden Street Methodist Church, where he had sung in the choir, had attended, and attended Bible classes were also there. Thankfully, Sergeant Dick Wagg survived the war. He was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal for his valour in retrieving the 3 men from no man's land and was presented with a Hunter Watch by Ronald Wheatcroft's parents after the war. He passed away in September 1964, having never spoken to his close family about his wartime service during his lifetime. A true hero. The Goncourt Somme had been devastating to an already understrengthened 139th Brigade, losing 95 men, 465 missing who were never found, and a further 626 who were wounded. The 7th Corps Commander, Lieutenant General Doyley Snow, who had been responsible for planning and overseeing the attack, quickly covered his tracks by writing to General Allenby, the commander of the 3rd Army, the next day, the 2nd of July, suggesting that the 46th North Midlands Division showed a lack of offensive spirit and condemned their leader, Major General Stuart Wortley, as not being fit enough to lead the men at the front. He wrote this before he had even read the after-battle reports explaining what had happened. As a result, a court of inquiry was quickly held on the 4th of July, and Stuart Wortley was sacked and sent back home to England, the only senior officer reprimanded for the Somme debacle. The Somme battle was to go on for a further 140 days before petering out on the 18th of November 1916. The British Army had suffered 1,124,000 casualties during this fruitless battle.
Thank you, Darren. Right, sorry about that. Just a final slide. I'd just like to say, as you said on there, thank you to Auntie Dodo for getting the ball rolling on this. And a very special thank you to John, where are you? John, and for his wife for sticking with it and letting him do it. Finding that grave, all through that research on the maps. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Dodo and John. And also to the Staveley branch, and I hope it is the Staveley branch or the Chesterfield branch of the Royal British Legion for providing the buglers and the standard bearers today, who did a fantastic job. Thanks very much, guys. And also to Father Kevin Ball, who sadly has been called away to a call out for taking the service. Bill McCormack is the author of a book called Lack of Offensive Spirit. If you ever have any interest in the First World War and about your local pals and what they went through at Gomecourt, there's a copy of the book in there. There's a very, very thick book called Lack of Offensive Spirit, and he explains everything that happened. And I can say it's the most moving book I've ever read in my life. It's the most factual and the most interesting, and obviously I've got a vested interest. He was going to be here today, but unfortunately got the boat to London, so he couldn't make it, which I'm very sad about. I had lots of questions for him. And again, a thank you to the rector and the congregation of the church and the ladies who are going to do the tea and coffee for us in a minute. And finally, thank you to Charlie and all the other thousands of brave men who fought for our freedom and made the ultimate sacrifice for us in the Great War. We'll never forget. Right, so there's tea, coffee and lots of cakes. Please don't leave us with lots of cakes to take home. And there's a beautiful Sherwood Forester cake in there as well. Please have as much as you like. And before we go any further, are there any questions? Dodo, go on.
You mentioned the granddaughter.
Yes.
That very brave man is here today.
Yes.
I haven't met her. Is she
Jeanette,
here?
put your hand up, Jeanette. Yes, she is. She's here. And just for everybody, this is the grandson here. This is Dick Rad's grandson. And over in the annex over there, you can see a cabinet with some medals in. Dick Wad's medals and the Distinguished Conduct Medal for rescuing those three guys is the extreme left one. It's in the medal cabinet with the green baize behind it. Please have a look at that, because that was well earned and hard earned. Thanks, Dick. Okay. Any more questions at all? Sorry, sir.
Was the Captain Robinson a member of the Chesterfield Robinson family?
I don't.
I can answer that one. Captain Robinson owned Robinson Works.
That's what I'm asking.
And when my granddad came, when all the Chesterfield soldiers came back to Chesterfield,
yes,
they were guaranteed a job at Robinson Works. That's where my granddad worked.
That's the answer. Thank you very much.
Anybody else at all?
Just a point, ladies and gentlemen. If you look over there, the standards are there for the old contemptibles, and Ken and I have been playing here since 1951. We buried a lot of contemptibles, and still every year we turn up. It would be lovely to see you lot here on Armistice Sunday and fill the church again, because we have to leave when they do standing room only, and now we're down to probably 30 people at best. So Armistice Sunday, once again, to remember these very brave men. Thank you.
Tea and coffee, everybody. Okay.